It's been about 10 years since I came out as a mermaid. I was living in Japan doing research on Okinawa. And for my research, I did a lot of scuba diving. I spent a lot of time underwater when I was living in Okinawa, practicing essential life mermaid skills, though at the time I did not realize that's what those were. They included things like breathing underwater, perfecting buoyancy, communicating with hand signals, and of course, just feeling really good. And I think part of the reason I spent so much time under the water in Okinawa was that I just felt more at home when I was in the water. When I was out of the water on the land, I felt slightly uncomfortable, slightly like I didn't belong. And though I had learned so much of the Japanese language and I knew a whole lot about Japanese culture, there was some part of me that just didn't feel quite at home. So one day, I surfaced from a leisurely afternoon dive, and I looked over on the shore to notice an American. And there are plenty of Americans in Okinawa. That part wasn't that remarkable, but he was out on the shore, and he'd been diving as well, and in fact, I guessed correctly that he was a Marine. And we got to talking, and within just a few minutes, we were marveling at how easy it is to feel out of place when you're in another country, but how just in this brief interaction, we felt like we had both kind of synced in and were once again at home together. And what followed was a very intense and kind of torrid love affair, one that that began and was founded on this notion that we'd found each other against all odds, that we were sort of one in a million in our pairing, and that we had so much in common. Well, about a month into our torrid love affair, he realized that his odds of finding his soulmate on Okinawa were actually 2 in a million. It happens. Because he met somebody else and dumped me. So needless to say, I was feeling very sad and brokenhearted and lonely, and actually much, much lonelier than I had felt in the first place before we'd ever met. And for me, heartache manifested the way it does for so many of us. Sadness, weepiness, feeling low, mopey, down. And I got so down and I got so low that after a few weeks I thought, there's got to be a pill for this. There's got to be a pill. So I went to see a psychiatrist and I said, I need some help. I can't get out of bed. I can't sleep. And he recommended Paxil. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll give that a try. So I went and I filled my prescription. I started taking Paxil, and sure enough, within about 3 or 4 days, I started to feel a little bit lighter. I started to feel better. I started to get some of my energy back. And I think I was sleeping again. I think that things were starting to normalize, and I know that if nothing else, I just had some energy. And so I took my Paxil for about a week, and I found myself ready to get out and dive again. And I went for a dive, and at some point I came back, and I think I took another Paxil, and I really was starting to feel really good. Starting to feel really excited about everything. Everything was so beautiful and so funny. And I just knew that things were better now. Things were good. And I do remember, though, that I woke up one morning and I looked down at my arm and I tried to get out of bed, and it just didn't come with me. It sort of just flopped. And I thought, well, that's strange. Why isn't my arm working? And then I felt this sort of a pain in my neck, and I thought, that's strange. Why does my neck hurt? And after a while, I took another Paxil, and then I thought, I should maybe go to the doctor because my arm isn't quite working. So I put it in a sling, fashioned a sling, and I went out to my car, and I just knew that I didn't want to get in my car. I didn't know why, but I was going to walk to the doctor, so I walked to the orthopedist's office, and I said, hey, my arm's not working. And he said, well, what happened? Did you hurt it? Were you in an accident? And I said, I don't think so, but it doesn't work, and my neck hurts too. And so he said, well, why don't I give you some steroids? I think that might help. And so in went the needle. And I went to walk home from my appointment, and I was feeling pretty good, and walking kind of just wasn't getting me home fast enough. And so I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to jog. I think I'm going to run home, because that was what felt right in that moment. I just had so much energy, and I was so excited, and my arm was sort of flailing along behind me, but I didn't care. I didn't care. And I got home, and I just felt like I just wanted to dance, and I just needed to turn on the music, and I really just needed to keep moving. So I was moving, and maybe I was moving in circles, and maybe when those circles weren't big enough, I went outside and I'm running around the house, and I'm thinking, this is amazing. Who knew heartache could be so much fun? And then I took another Paxil, and I must have gotten in the car, because I know that I went for a drive. I must have just had to go somewhere. I had to keep moving. And at some point, I just noticed when I was driving that my whole right side of my body kind of went limp, and I felt this loss of strength on the side, and I don't know if I fell asleep. I don't know what happened, but I just remember looking up and noticing that my car was careening into the back of the stopped car in front of me. And I slammed on what I think should have been the brake, maybe if I was in the United States, but I was on the opposite side of the road, and ultimately I accelerated directly into the back of this car, and it was so strange, and it was so scary, and it was absolutely hilarious, because everything in that moment was so funny, and I couldn't stop laughing. It was, did anybody see this? Look what just happened. And I'm laughing, and I might be crying, but I'm not really sure, and I just know that the police officer came to take the report, and he asked me, what happened? What happened here? And I said, I don't know, but I think I need to go to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, they asked me what was going on with me, and I said, I don't know for sure, but I really just I feel like I might be a mermaid. And that didn't really make a whole lot of sense to most of the people I was speaking with, but then they moved me into the psych unit. And there they asked me a different set of questions. And I met with this wonderful nurse. And she had these crinkly eyes, and she smiled at me, and she told me that she knew what it was like to be out of place in another country. She had spent some time after the war living in Kansas. And she said, listen, I know what it's like to not be quite Japanese and to not belong in America either. And what she said to me in Japanese was, "Watashi tachi ga mermaids da yo," which meant, we're mermaids. And I said, yes, 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 we're mermaids. This is what I've been trying to say. And I felt in that moment, we didn't know at that time. We didn't know that I might have had post-concussive syndrome or perhaps steroid-induced mania, or perhaps even just a lowly old broken heart. We didn't know any of that, but what I did know was that sitting there with Keiko in that moment, we were mermaids. I was a mermaid, and it was going to be okay.